for the DSO, a longer contracted work back period is better. You're getting a 5-year work back. And so the price is significantly inflated, not because they're paying you more for your practice, but because you're working for 5 years. So they're basically prepaying you a bunch of money, and then you work back for them for 5 years. You're paying them back 1 times EBITDA for every year that you work back.
I'm not knocking you for what you're saying, but I will say this, not everybody is the same.
And I'm going to sell you on this idea of this wonderland lifestyle that you're going to have, where you're going to have generational wealth, which is bull. It's just going to be easy street. You're not going to have to ever sweat again in your life. And it's going to be all roses, and you're going to be swimming in a giant pool of gold coins like Scrooge McDuck. And I'm saying that's bull.
Welcome back to another episode of Dental Marketing Theory. I'm your host, Gary Bird. I'm the owner of SMC National, where we help offices just like yours level the playing field against the big guys out there so you can grow the way that you want. But what if the big guys are manipulating you and giving you some smoke and mirrors when it comes to purchasing your practice? This is not a new topic, but one that is probably displayed in a little bit of a different way than you've ever seen before. I'll be honest with you, usually I learn a ton from my podcast, but every so often I have my opinion changed on a topic, and today is one of those episodes. I have Elijah Desmond, who's a seasoned dental entrepreneur, co-founder and co-CEO of Dental Pitch Brokerage, where he helps dentists sell their practices for maximum value and ideal terms. I also have Nate Williams, who is CPA, CFP, and is the founder and CEO at Practice Financial Group and helps dentists with simplifying their financial lives through tax planning, accounting, and comprehensive financial strategies. He also hosts the podcast called Just Say No to DSOs. And that's actually how I first heard about Nate. And he was gracious enough to come on today and have a conversation with Elijah. And we get to the bottom of, should you sell your practice to a private dentist or to a DSO? Stay tuned. All right, we are live, and I'm excited about this episode because you don't get this a lot in the dental industry. I'm going to be very, very honest. Most people, when they have differing opinions or they come from opposite ends of the spectrum on any opinion, people just avoid each other and they don't talk about it. And so I am so excited about today's episode because we're going to be jumping into the weeds of a particular topic that is really important to the dental industry. It's basically the future of dental. And how this came about is I've listened to Nate's podcast. This is the first time I'm meeting him. So he's like, hey, I'll come on and talk to anybody about anything. So I really, really value that about people when they're just willing to share their side of the story. And I actually met him through his podcast. So I was listening to one of his podcast shows of Just Say No to DSOs, and he laid out a very compelling argument. And I loved it. And I know Elijah, I've done multiple podcasts with him, multiple different events, all kinds of stuff with Elijah over the years. And so when we were doing the podcast, I said, can I bring up this other podcast? Because I think it gives kind of a counterpoint. And he was like, absolutely, let's do it. And after the podcast, I was like, man, we should do a joint podcast. And both of them agreed. So we got him here, we hit record. And I want to start with you, Elijah. What are your thoughts? Should dentists sell to private practices or DSOs?
Sorry for interrupting the show, but I got something special for you. So we only got 27 more seats at our in-person event. We're going to be helping you grow in 2026. We're going to be putting together a growth map for you, helping you with attracting the right kind of team members, attracting the right kind of patients, and getting your systems in place for next year so you can actually grow. Now, this event is normally $499, but I have a discount code down below for $199. Make sure you sign up right away. There's only a few seats left. We look forward to seeing you soon. Now back to the show.
Oh, it's an excellent question. Perfect title for the podcast. I just want to make a very strong statement as we're starting. I stand for private practice dentistry and group dentistry. So both. So I don't have an extreme one side or the other. I'm for the dentist and whatever they want. And so I think that that's so important that Nate, who I was hoping was going to be, it's Bob, right? Is that your partner with me? I was hoping it was Bob because I watched Nate like literally rip up, chew up and spit out somebody that was all for straight DSOs. And I'm like, that's not going to be me. That's not going to be me. So I just want to start by saying I want what's best for the dental practice, and I stand for dentistry as a whole. And so I can't say I'm for either side, but I am against make it like a blanket statement. So I mean that's just my opening statement. I think it's super important.
So just to frame that is should dentists sell to a private practice or DSOs? Your answer is it depends.
It depends, and it's what's best for them in the situation that they're at in their current practice. I don't think that there's one size fits all.
All right, Nate, what are your thoughts on that question? Should dentists sell to private practices or DSOs?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me here, Gary and Elijah. I'm sorry to disappoint you if you're hoping for Bob to come on the show. So before I answer the question, Gary, sorry, say that again.
I said Bob's the nicer one. I listened to that podcast. There was two of them, and Bob was like in the corner talking, gave some stuff. You were like literally, let me get you. I'm gonna get you. Like that's what I've done.
Kitchener episode.
I sure am. Yes.
Yeah, I would love, that was kind of like the Thrilla in Manila, and I want round 2 with Chip Fitchner. I don't think his stock increased after that episode, so I don't know that he'll be coming on with me anymore. So before I answer your question, Gary, your question was, should a dentist sell to a private practice or another dentist, or should they sell to a DSO? Elijah, I've got to ask you a question. The way that I got wind of that you guys had recorded this episode is you sent out a mass email to, I guess you've got an email list, and somebody read that and somebody sent it and it landed in my inbox. And this is what you wrote in that email. Okay, I'm going to quote. You said, Gary is so fired up. He wants to have a boxing match with the host of Say No to the DSO. Yes, you read that right. End quote. So I just want to clarify that. Gary, first question, is that true that you are so fired up that you want to have a boxing match with either me or Bob Spiel? That's first question. And second question, were you hoping to have a boxing match with 65-year-old Bob Spiel or 46-year-old Nate Williams?
That's a really good question. So I haven't seen the email, I don't think, that you're talking to, but if I remember the story correctly, when Elijah and I were talking afterwards, we talked about, I said, man, I would love to do a podcast where we have like both opinions on both sides and we put like boxing gloves on them. It was very metaphorical. Definitely not the dental industry. I don't think is ready for celebrity boxing yet.
I mean, am I getting invited here to promote the next, like an actual boxing match? And if so, how big a boy are you, Gary?
I am 6'7", 345 pounds, and my virtual self. No, I'm very normal and definitely not trying to do celebrity boxing right now. I don't think dental's ready for that yet.
Hey, listen, let me chime in on that. Let me just say, if there was a boxing match, I'm tagging in my 54-year-old business partner, Golden Glove champ, Matt Ornstein, that's 6'3" and about 250 pounds.
No boxing matches.
That would be probably more suitable. Maybe we could arrange that another day. But I am grateful to be here, and I love talking about this subject. It's a subject I'm very passionate about. I've been working with dental practice owners since 2007, and I feel very protective of them and looking out for their interests. I feel like my financial motives are to actually help my clients build wealth. And so if there's something out there that's so great, I want to know about it. Your question, Gary, was, should a dentist sell to a DSO or to another doctor? I believe, well, let me establish this. Do we all agree on this? In a dental practice, how much of the success, or I should say, how much of the revenue of the dental practice is attributed to the dentist? Let me reframe that a different way. If you have an oral surgery practice, very sought after practice for DSOs, if you have an oral surgery practice and there's $30,000 of production queued up that day, if the oral surgeon calls in sick, how much revenue does the practice produce that day? Zero. The revenue of a dental practice, and this is very unique to dentistry, there are very few businesses where it's like this, but the revenue of a dental practice is derived from the trained mind and the trained hands of the dentist. If you cut off the dentist's hands, you have no practice, you have no business. And so I'm very much in favor in a business like that, that the person who is in there working with his or her hands, I'm very much in favor that that person own the business, that they're in control of the business. They own the business. They reap all of the rewards of the profits of the business, which we call the EBITDA. If it's you working with your hands, I think you should own that. If I own that, if I'm a DSO and if I own that, then I literally own you. And what you have, Gary, is a very profitable industry, which you know, it's a very profitable industry. Dentists are highly skilled, highly trained, and the good ones can make a lot of money. And there's a lot of people who want a piece of the action. And there's a huge financial incentive if I can convince, some oral surgeon or some orthodontist or some pediatrician or whoever, general dentist, if I can convince you to work for me and I own your business, that is very profitable for me. It's also an extremely profitable venture to broker practices away from dentists. This is from the Henry Schein website. This is not Nate Williams making this up. This is right on the Henry Schein website. I'm going to read it to you quote for quote, word for word, because Henry Schein acquired a majority interest in large practice sales. Chip Fitchner is the self-proclaimed largest and most expert practice broker in America. And it says, headquartered in Irving, Texas, LPS, Large Practice Sales, had 2022 net sales of approximately $40 million. Now, in 2022, this was prior to being acquired by Henry Schein. Now, they merged with Henry Schein Practice Brokerage or whatever they were calling their practice. You guys know Henry Schein has a practice brokerage firm. But before that, Large Practice Sales was not a huge operation. Chip Fitchner's only been in this business for, according to him, 8 years. It's him, his business partner, whose name I forget, Matt somebody, and then, some administrative staff. So $40 million is a lot of money. And so for Elijah and his partner, I know, Elijah, you come out and say, I'm neutral and I just care about dentistry and all of that. And I get that. That's a very skilled sales tactic. And, I'm not trying to offend you personally, but it's a very skilled sales tactic to bring the guard down of the person you're trying to sell. But the fact of the matter is there's a massive commission for the broker who can get the practice out of the hands of the dentist and into the hand of the DSO. The other thing that we know for a fact is that it is much easier to broker practices to DSOs because the DSO gobbles the whole thing up. I don't know how familiar you are with practice transitions, like from doctor to doctor transition, Gary, but it is a very difficult project. I mean, you're trying to getting the selling doctor to sell his practice is like trying to get somebody to marry off his daughter, right? And then the buying doctor is scared out of his mind. It's very difficult. It's hard work to broker practices. For a long time, I've actually been a proponent of brokers, even though dentists say, I don't want to hire a broker, they charge 10%. I've always, for a long time, for my whole career, mostly, I've been saying, no, it's worth it because this is emotionally the most difficult transaction you will ever do in your life. So my point, back to answer your question, is there's a massive financial incentive for the DSO to buy these practices and to convince the doctors to work for them, older doctors and younger doctors. There's a huge financial incentive for Elijah and his friends who are brokering practices to convince doctors to do it. So in answer to your question, what is it better to do? I'm in favor of dentists owning the work of their hands. So I'm in favor of dentists selling to other dentists, and I'm in favor of dentists owning their practices, or in other words, owning the work of their hands.
Got it. Okay, Elijah, I want to give you the opportunity to answer to those two things. So there was two main points as I caught them. Number one, your position as a sales pitch. Obviously, you want to address that. And then number two, doctor to doctor is just way harder. You're not going to be able to get as many deals done as fast, and it's going to cause a lot more friction.
So I'll start on the comment that Nate made about brokers make a massive amount of money on a sale. I want to start with that. Traditionally in this space, brokers, just to be very clear, brokers make between 6 and 10% on the transaction. So I wanted to get the word massive defined. That's just industry standard, and that's what it is. I believe you're saying that you do think that somebody should use a broker. I think that that's what you said. But the opposition to a broker is you're saying that you're convincing a doctor to sell. Is that, I just want to make sure I heard that right.
What I'm saying is if you have a walk-away traditional sale, Dr. Jones is old and retiring, and he brought in Dr. Desmond to come in and buy the practice. And Dr. Jones is going to sell the practice to Dr. Desmond, and then Dr. Jones will be around for a couple of weeks, maybe a month or two, and then he's gone. He's hitting the beach, right? And then you are taking over. When you sell to a DSO, so 6 to 10%, that's true. But when you sell to a DSO, that's not what you're getting. You're getting generally a 5-year work back. The DSO would want you for longer if they could, but they generally, for the DSO, a longer contracted work back period is better. So you're getting a 5-year work back. And so the price is significantly inflated, not because they're paying you more for your practice, but because you're working for 5 years. So they're basically prepaying you a bunch of money, and then you work back for them for 5 years. And so you're paying them back 1 times EBITDA for every year that you work back. If a DSO pays 7 times EBITDA for a practice with a 5-year work back, I would argue that that's the equivalent of a 2 times EBITDA price, because you're working back for 5 years and you're giving them 1 times EBITDA from your labor every year that you work back. And so what you have, 6 to 10%, the percentage doesn't change. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is the multiple, the stated purchase price is drastically inflated. If Dr. Bird is selling to Dr. Desmond, it might be a 3 times EBITDA sales price, which generally is going to work out to be 80 to 100% of collections, right? So it's 3 times EBITDA. But if Dr. Bird sells to DSO, they're going to say, we're going to give you 8 times EBITDA. And so you're going to get 8 times EBITDA. You're going to get a much larger chunk of money up front. Yes, that is true. And Elijah, you're going to charge your 6 to 10% on the much larger amount, right? You're going to charge your percent on the much larger amount. So what you have here, Gary, is you've got an arrangement where you've created this huge financial incentive for guys like Elijah to talk doctors into selling their practice. Because if I can get you to sell your practice for 8 times EBITDA, I get 8 times EBITDA. If you have $1 million EBITDA practice, that's $8 million. I get to charge my 6 to 10% on $8 million instead of my 6 to 10% on the $3 million, which I would sell for a doctor to doctor. Now, the doctor thinks that he's selling the practice for a larger price, and I'm here to say that's not true. Because with the 5-year work back, every year that you work back, 1 EBITDA is 1 year's worth of earnings. And so if Gary, you sell your business for 8 times EBITDA with a 5-year work back, every year that you work back for me, you're now doing all of the labor, but you're putting the EBITDA now in my pocket because I'm the DSO. And so if you do that 5 times, 5 years, you've given me 5 times EBITDA. So I'm saying you sold your practice, not to mention that you're not even getting the $8 million of cash, Gary. You're getting part of that in cash, and you're getting part of that in DSO equity, which is, maybe it hits, but I have Chip Fitcher coming on my show saying the vast majority of these doctors will not see any money from the equity. And I'm saying, yeah, you're right. The equity reminds me of the scene in Dumb and Dumber where they come in with a gun and Lloyd Christmas says, that's as good as cash. Those are IOUs. And he hands them the slip that says 250,000 Lamborghini. You might want to hang on to that one.
So I love, these are great points, but I want to stay on this topic. So, but I want to go to that. So we'll go to that next about the payouts at the end and those, equity and all those kind of things, because that's fascinating. So I want to give Elijah the opportunity to respond to this.
That was a link. I had to start writing notes on my phone because there was a whole bunch of responses that I had to that. And I think that Nate, you're right on a lot of those things, but the blanket statement is my issue. Because not all practices are capable of being bought by a private practice, right? You have bigger practices. Like let's just make an example. A $4 million practice. The doctors built their practice. They spent, all X amount of money on consultants, building it up, growing it out, et cetera. And they want to sell their practice. And it's a $4 million practice, right? Let's just say a doctor comes out of school or has their second office. It's difficult for that doctor to purchase that practice financially. Would you disagree with me, and how so?
Good question. Elijah, how long have you been working in this transition space?
About a year and a half myself.
Okay. Gary, how long have you been involved in practice transitions, or like aware of practice transitions?
Several years. I mean, I've heard about it, but I'm a marketing guy, so I'm just here I'm only market for dental offices. I understand dental growth. This is not my strong suit.
What you're saying, Elijah, is a larger practice is harder. You're dealing with one of these alpha type doctors who's very experienced, and she is not going to be able to sell that to a newborn doctor right out of dental school. That is true in most cases. The fever pitch of selling to DSOs really started in 2020. It was during COVID. That's when guys like Chip Fitchner became famous. That's when, Brian Cole, all these guys who are like, everybody's got to sell. And the current modern narrative around DSOs, like harvest your life's work at long-term capital gains rates and you're too big to sell. That narrative has only been around for since 2020, it was inception. 2021, it was in 2022. Those were like the fever pitch years. That was the golden age of practice transition brokering. You should have been around for that. That's when the big money was made, Elijah. Too bad you weren't there for that windfall. But pre-2020, no one in America was saying what you're saying right now. There have been decades worth of transitions happening. Doctors selling their practices for generations. And pre-2020, this huge, rush, like gold rush of selling to DSOs, which has really been a gold rush for the brokers. The whole thing is too big to sell to another doctor was.
Nate, you're a finance guy though, right? Like that is you. You know your numbers better than everybody, right? I just want, and I'm not saying you're right or you're wrong. I want you to articulate to me how a private practice dentist, a normal private practice dentist, is going to, there's unicorns out there for sure, but in general, a regular private practice dentist purchase a dental practice that's a $4 million in collections that's got call it a 25% margin. Like financially, how does that happen? What is this an easy way or a medium way even?
It's a good question. Are you a sports fan?
College football, Ohio State University.
I'm a Michigan guy, so that explains a lot. I'm just kidding. I'm not a Michigan guy. I'm going to use NFL quarterbacks as kind of the example. At the year 2000, who are the greatest quarterbacks of all time? Go back in your the history of your mind. Year 2000, who is everybody talking about were the GOATs of NFL quarterbacks? It's 2000.
Manning, Brady.
Those guys weren't even born in their careers in 2000. You got to go back earlier than that, Gary. Joe Montana, Brett Favre, Bart Starr, right? These were the superstars of the league. Now, if you talk about superstar NFL quarterbacks, who are you talking about? Not those guys. Why? Because the new generation has surpassed them. When you're talking about one of these big practices, Elijah, that is like you've got an alpha type running the practice, and you've just got a super stud in there, either managing really good clinically, usually good sales, good leadership, oftentimes possibly managing associates, whatever. In order to replace that practice and get the value out of that practice, you need to replace that doctor with another superstar. If you're the New England Patriots and you've just had a big run with Tom Brady, you can't replace Tom Brady with a peewee football quarterback. You've got to replace that guy with another superstar in order to keep the value going. So yes, the number of doctors who can, you're talking about like the top 5% of practices that are, quote unquote, too big to sell. And so you're talking about the top 5% of doctors. So when you look at the younger generation, it's going to be about 5% of them that are going to have the chutzpah and the capability, the God-given talents and the drive to be able to replace that doctor. That's the hard part. But those guys aren't in dental school right now. You know where those guys are? Those guys are working for DSOs currently. June 12th, 2025. Those future owners of the big practices are currently working for DSOs because they've been told that the only way to go is to DSOs. So they're now working for DSOs. They're really good clinically. They can sell dentistry. They're not as good as salesmen as you guys, but they can sell dentistry and they've got some leadership skills. Guess what? Those guys are not going to work for the DSOs for their whole career. If you think those guys are going to work for the DSOs for your whole career, you're out of your mind. They're not. Why? They're going to wake up one day and realize, what the heck? I am this practice. I'm not going to sit here and fatten the pockets of these guys who I've never even met before. I'm going to go and be the man. And that's when they're going to be looking for practices. So this whole narrative of too big to sell, it's only a narrative that's ever even been a thing for the last 4 years. But that's how you solve it, Elijah. You find another superstar. You replace Tom Brady with, I don't know, somebody good.
And that's a hard one. Yeah, just FYI, year 2000, Peyton Manning was the passing yards leader.
Yeah, I think he graduated college in 1998. So he was still a baby, but nobody was talking about him as the GOAT.
Brady wasn't even, he was the passing leader that year. And Dante Culpepper had the second, the most touchdown passes. Tom, to your point though, Tom Brady wasn't even playing yet. Drew Bledsoe was the starting quarterback. He was on the, still in college.
We're talking about a very small percentage of these super stud practices. And you need to replace a stud with another stud.
Let me ask another question. What do you consider, how many practices and what do you consider a DSO? So for example, if a dentist owns a single practice, clearly they're not a DSO, right? If a dentist owns a single practice and is buying their second practice, are you okay with that? Try not to be long-winded because I got a whole bunch of questions after that.
I don't have anything morally against that. Like if a dentist wants to go out and buy a second practice, I may or may not want to do that. I may or may not agree with that. I may or may not think that's a good venture, but I don't have anything morally against that. Where I take a hard stand is when there's a tremendous amount of salesmanship trying to convince doctors that this is the yellow brick road to financial paradise to sell to a DSO. And it's not true. And a lot of the things that are being told to them are simply not true.
So if I was to summarize your point of view, just so I understand it, is if a dentist comes out and says, look, I don't want to own a practice, I want to go work for somebody else, and they go and work for somebody else, let's say it's a private practice, the private practice owner doctor, you don't have any issue with him hiring that associate because they're clearly stating like, I don't want the headache, I don't want that.
Totally. One of my really good friends has worked for Gentle Dental his entire career. He's like 50 something years old. He's worked for Gentle Dental his entire career. And I asked him, I said, Sean, why are you working for Gentle Dental? Don't you know you're leaving a lot of money on the table? He said, Nate, are you kidding? I don't want to deal with any of that stuff. I just want to go. I want to be an employee.
Yeah. So you don't have any issue with that. Where you have an issue is when it's the bait and switch that you've addressed up front. That's the core issue that you have.
Tremendous amount of salesmanship, marketing like hell to try to get these guys. And it's never, Gary, it's never come sell your practice. It's, hey, just talk to us. Just call me and just come see how much your practice is worth. I'm not trying to, I'm Switzerland here. I don't care. I love everybody, but just come see what your private practice is worth. And then you're dealing with the likes of some of the best salesmen in the world and is stealing candy from a baby.
Because they don't, and the reason it's stealing candy from a baby, just to frame your point, is that the terms are not what people think they are. If let's say the terms were perfectly clear and exactly what everybody said, then you wouldn't have an issue, right? It's that there's a bait and switch. Is that what you're saying? Like, that's your point, right?
What I'm saying is they're just filling them up with pipe dreams that aren't true, or that are pipe dreams that are like possibly best case scenarios. Like I heard of this. It's like talking to a bunch of farmers in the Midwest and telling them, come to California, you're going to get gazillion rich off gold. Because I know a guy who did that here, and let me sell you a bunch of gear along the way for your trip. And most of those guys are going to die along the way. And most of them aren't even going to make it to California. And most of them are not going to get gold. but we're telling them how wonderful it is and come to the golden state.
How many practices are you okay with a dentist selling to? Like if they have X number of practices, is it that they're backed by private equity?
I don't think that's his point. So Elijah, where I would love you to like drill down on this is his point is that you're getting the unethical part is that there's a bait and switch. The doctor's being told you're getting paid this much more by the DSO, but in reality, they're trading their time and it's worth far less than if they were to sell to a private practice and not trade their time.
Right. Unless they're done with the business, right? They're tired of running the business. They're just drained from not being able to keep a hygienist in their practice. They can't find a front office. They're terrible with cash flow. Like if they're tired and they don't want to run it, like I've seen so many dentists, like I'm just tired. Maybe they don't, it's not that they have to sell to a DSO. They can sell to another private practice dentist or their associate, but they're tired of running the business. So I agree with most of it. I just don't think it's a blanket stat. Like my number one issue is the blanket statement. Because if you've seen one DSO, you've seen one DSO. There are so many types. There's mid-size, there's large, there's emerging groups. Like I was just with a doctor last night that had 18 locations. Is one of the nicest doctors I've ever met. And he's a doctor and he's got he buys smaller practices essentially. And his doctors love him. They have a great relationship. There's another group, Rodeo Dental. That's a DSO, a pediatric practice. Like they're obsessed. They love their doctors that sell. They don't sell to them, but that DSO they love. They don't buy. It's all de novo. They love working in that environment. And so I think that the biggest piece that you're ultimately stating is that if you're going to go work for somebody for 5 years, you're basically paying them back the money, and you'd have been better off to just sell to a private practice dentist and not had to work anymore. Essentially, is that about right?
In every scenario that I've personally looked at, which is a lot, I would say that's absolutely true. I've looked at many, many offers, including Chip Fitchner offers, including MB2 offers, including Carrie Strain offers. I mean, some of these big names of guys who are running DSOs and now, pimping out practices, whatever. I've looked at, I don't know whose offer. I've looked at Pacific Dental offering buying practices. I've looked at a lot of, have I seen every one? No. But have I looked at a lot of them? And your comment is, if you've seen one DSO, you've seen one DSO. But that's like me saying, if you've seen one greasy fast food burger joint, you've seen one greasy fast food burger joint. My guess is if you go to the next greasy fast food burger joint, you're going to find greasy fries and a greasy burger. And that's what you're going to find. What I'm talking about is not the nice guy who's like the doctor who has a few practices as associates working for him. I'm talking about, hey, come sell your practice. And in the meantime, I'm going to get a fat commission by talking you into this. And I'm going to sell you on this idea of this wonderland lifestyle that you're going to have, where you're going to have generational wealth, which is bullcrap. And you're going to have, it's just going to be easy street. You're not going to have to ever sweat again in your life. And it's going to be all roses, and you're going to be swimming in a giant pool of gold coins like Scrooge McDuck. And I'm saying, that's bullcrap.
When you say, I'm going to sell you, are you saying that are you always talking about the broker in that specific instance, the broker?
Well, DSOs do it too.
What are you primarily saying? Brokers or DSOs?
The DSOs do it too. I've seen a lot of salesmanship from the DSO, right? Like I reviewed a deal from Carrie Strain's DSO, and he was selling one of his own clients. And I reviewed that deal, and there was a tremendous amount of salesmanship that was happening there. So they both do it. But the brokers, Elijah, I don't have anything against you personally. I just don't like what you're doing for a living, because I don't think you're in this role. And I love that you're an entrepreneur. You're talking dentists out of doing what you're so passionate about. Like being an entrepreneur, being a CEO, being a business owner is hard work. It requires grit. It's day in and day out. And any CEO entrepreneur who's actually successful, who tells you that it's really wonderful and it's all trips to Hawaii, is lying to you. It's hard. And being a good dentist and running a profitable practice is hard work. And so what I'm saying, there's just a lot of salesmanship to try to get these guys to sell their practice. And we can talk very specifics about what those salesmanship is and why I think it's...
I would love to talk specifics about that specifically, because I have my own personal issues that I have to deal with because of salesmanship, as you're saying, and talking like ridiculous numbers. And I don't think, by the way, that $4 million in collections practice, I think you and I both know those exist. There's plenty of those that exist. Here's what I don't like: when there's magazine articles, podcasts, etc., when people are talking about ridiculousness like 10, 11, 12 times multiples that do not exist, and talking about that one-off multiple and making the world say that everybody is going to get that. And that's when I have to reverse, like, that's not what the industry is bringing right now. That was something that you were told so that way that you could get to sign on the dotted line. I also knew the industry that I was getting into before I was getting into it. My business partner, Matt Ornstein, started with 20 locations and he bought up 50 locations through brokers, right? And he has Oak Dental Partners. He has a DSO, so you probably don't like him. But regardless, my point is that he's seen all of the things that were done wrong, and as you would call salesmanship. And ultimately, those are things that for us and for me, I'm super ethical and I got integrity, and my relationship is all I had, all I've got. I came into this space a year and a half ago, and I was very aware of greasy and oil and snake oil and all of the above. So, and you've been in the industry way longer than me, so I'm not knocking you for what you're saying, but I will say this: not everybody is the same. And on top of that, when I say not everybody, the dental brokers, not all brokers are the same, and not every situation is the same. So there are many dentists that are already wanting to sell that come to us, right? They say, I want to sell my practice. In a situation where they say, I want to sell my practice, are you saying that you should use a broker or you shouldn't use a broker? I'm just a little bit confused because you when I did this, you're throwing that drab of sports salesmanship.
Yeah, when I say salesmanship, just so we're clear, what I mean is deception. So I use the word salesmanship. Salesmanship in and of itself is not a bad word. I think sales is actually a value add if it's done right and with integrity. And there's a role for sales in our world. It's helping people make decisions and get what they want. What I'm referring to, so let's call it, what I'm actually referring to is deception, where you're deceiving the doctor intentionally or ignorantly. Either way, you're deceiving into something that is not going to be, or has a very, very low probability of being what they're going to be.
It's the bait and switch again. We're back to the main point. So Elijah, do you agree with Nate that what he's saying does happen in the DSO world?
100%. Yes, I wholeheartedly agree with what he is saying. Yes, about the deception. Yes.
What are some specific examples of deception that you have seen?
Contracts that state in the event that you don't move forward with this agreement after we spent X amount of time, you owe us up to $50,000. Contracts that are reinstated for 24 months after contract is over without notice of even reaching out and notifying the person, telling someone that their practice that's $250,000 of EBITDA is going to pull 8 times multiple in this environment. All of that is deceptive. Making somebody believe that something is not true, like those exact examples, and in fact, it's false.
So do you agree with him on the specifically the bait and switch, that there's DSOs out there that are presenting themselves as paying way more, but in reality, you're just getting paid to work?
Yes, there's a specific group, and when you're under NDA, you can't say names, but there's a specific large DSO who's purchasing 51%, and they don't get the remainder of that until they recap. Like, there's so many things that are so far out, like they're paying half for the practice. So there are many DSOs and many contracts that I completely don't agree with. And by the way, I'm not the one that is negotiating the contracts. We're a sell-side brokerage firm, right? And by the way, I think it's also very important to know this, and Nate, you probably are aware of this. There are brokers that accept money from the buy side. That's another deception.
And why is that a deception? Why? Explain it to me like a real estate agent or something like that. Like, why is that an issue?
Meaning you're representing the seller, and the seller is going to pay you a percentage, the 6 to 10% of the sales price. The seller is going to pay you that out of the proceeds that he or she receives. And what Elijah's saying is that in some cases, the DSO is also giving the broker a kickback. So the broker was basically purchased.
Got it. Yeah, you're not getting an honest opinion then. Yeah, you can't get an honest opinion. Okay, so that makes sense. So Elijah agrees with you, Nate, that these things happen. So then what's the situation then, Elijah, that it is ethical and it is right? Because I know you said the issue is that Nate's being too broad. So where is the ethical purchase of the DSOs and when is it okay and those kind of things from your point of view?
Yeah, absolutely. So I believe that, let me just make an example. Heartland Dental, and I don't know if you like Heartland or not, Nate, but Heartland does 100% buyout, right? There's not equity down the road. It's a 100% buyout. Their culture is absolutely amazing. I believe personally, their leadership is amazing. I love Pat Bauer. I'm friends with Pat. I think that is a very good situation for a doctor who no longer wants to work any longer in the business piece, but still wants to practice. But it's like, I'm done with this business. I can't stand the business of dentistry. I'm out. I want to sell my practice. And even if it's a smaller practice, call it a $800,000 or $1 million practice, right? And that's an example of, I think that's work. I don't think there's any deception. I think it works for all parties involved. And that is one. There's definitely more than that, but I'm just saying that's one that I don't think a blanket statement can be blanketed in itself. And that's just one example.
Okay, so Nate, so what are your thoughts on that? Is that say no to DSO category? Is the example that Elijah just gave?
Are you asking if just say no to the DSO is in fact the universal blanket that I claim it is?
Well, I'm trying to get to, so right now you guys are agreeing, so, which is awesome.
Here's how I would respond to that. In general, I know for a fact that the revenue produced from a dental practice is because of the dentist. That's number one. Number two, the business of dentistry is not terribly complicated as far as businesses go. Apple computers, unbelievably complex. SpaceX, I don't even want to begin to think that I would even last a day running SpaceX, okay? A dental practice, it's the simplest business in the world. You walk in, say my teeth hurt, or I don't like my teeth in some way, something in my mouth. Doctor diagnoses, says, I can fix this. It'll cost $100. You say, great, do it. Here's $100. They walk out. That's it. And so I think that owning and operating a dental practice is not beyond the capabilities of most mature adults. And so I do think that you need help. Like I don't think you should be dentist by day, marketing expert by night. Marketing is very nuanced. It's highly strategic. You can waste a ton of money. And so I don't think you should be marketing your practice by yourself. I don't think you should be doing your accounting and your tax work by yourself. Like, no, hire that out. But in doing so, you put yourself in a position where you are doing only the things that can't be delegated, which are the clinical dentistry and the leadership of the practice and talking to the patients. Usually you want the doctor to be able to talk to the patients. So all of that is to say, I very much am of the opinion that doctors, especially doctors who have proven that they can run and operate their practices, I'm very much in favor of that. Now, back to the Heartland, if you're going to sell to a DSO, I will concede this point. Elijah, I'm going to concede something today. I'm not going to concede zero to you. It's going to be more than zero, okay? I will concede the point that I have a tremendous amount more respect for a DSO who walks in through the front door and says, they come in through the front door, not the back door, and they say, we want to buy 100% of your practice. And our value proposition, speaking from Heartland, our value proposition is we will take care of all of the business side of it. And you can just be the dentist. I have a lot more respect for that. And I can concede that some dental practice owners just like say, I'm done. I want to join Heartland. That's what I want to do. Heartland can offer me something that somebody else can't. Okay, so I will concede that point.
So would you say they're a good actor and then there's bad actors?
Oh, in everything, of course. Yeah, definitely there are good and bad actors. Here's what I don't love. I don't love I'm private equity backed. I'm coming in. I'm going to buy your practice and we're just going to as quickly put lipstick on this pig and sell it for a higher multiple. and I'm going to get in and I'm going to get out as fast as possible. Now, the problem, Gary, is that, and this is, you got to be aware of this too, Elijah, although I think you already know this, is there's a huge financial incentive to not broker the Heartland deals, but to broker the other deals. And when you've got these bigger practices, who can't sell to somebody else, that's where all the money is. But here, let me say this. Here's what I think is bad actor. And I'm going to stop after this because I know I talk a lot. What I think are the horrible deals are DSOs buying 51 to 90% of the practice. I think if they're buying 51 to 90% of your practice, to me, that's immediately a huge red flag that you're not dealing with people who actually have your best interest at heart.
So they should be buying 49% or below, or 100%. That's a safer zone for you.
Yeah, because if they buy 40, so here's the thing. When Chip Fitchner came on our show and he said, we brokered IDSOs. First of all, the term IDSO is just total garbage, right? Because the benefit of working for Heartland is that I have a name and a reputation and a community and all this stuff. But if I'm working with this invisible thing, it's like I'm doing all the work. I am the product and you're just taking all the money. So the term IDSO is just garbage. Elijah, if you've ever used that term before, I think that's garbage. And okay, the other thing is I asked Chip Fitchner, why are you selling, what does he do, 60 to 90% or is it 51 to 90%? I forget. Chip Fitchner's IDSO deal.
I don't know. I haven't said his model. I just know he's all for the large, only DSOs.
Only large practices. Why? Because those are the big fish. That's where you get the fat commissions, and 51 to 90%. And the reason for that, I asked him, well, why do you sell only 51 to 90%? And you know what his answer was? Well, because if it's not 51%, you can't consolidate it on the financial statements. So the answer he gave when asked, why do you buy 51% of the practice? The answer he gave was because of an accounting issue. Now, I'm a CPA, and I'm here to tell you that that's bullcrap. He completely lied to everybody on the show. What the truth is that at 51%, you have a controlling interest.
Control. I don't think there's no one, I think pretty much anybody would understand that. Buying, 51. The reason I want 51% of anything, my kids even do that. You know what I mean? Hey, here's a piece of cake. You guys split it. Whoever's cutting it, the other person gets to choose, and they split it as fair as possible. Okay, so Elijah, help me understand this. Unpack this for me from your point of view. So you guys agree that there are good actors and bad actors in the DSO space. And we got to a number now, 49% below is a much safer deal because I'm in control as the dentist. And then 100% is good because it's like, look, you own it, but I'm just getting to be the dentist. That makes sense. And I can get with that. Elijah, how are you dealing with people who are at that 51% to that 99%? Are you?
Yeah, so I don't like 51% at all. And I don't like those terms. I barely like 60 or 65%. When we come across deals like that, typically it's when a dentist wants to grow, they're already really big and they want to grow and they need a financial partner to help them grow. Not necessarily. It could be more marketing, better team members, more marketing, add to their building. Could be grow to a second location potentially. But for the most part, you're looking at somebody who wants a financial partner to grow and they think that there's more room in the practice to grow and they want to grow with somebody. They want to grow by themselves. And that's what I'm seeing when it comes to that model. The 51% deal that, I'll just say there are bad actors out there and there's a lot of dentists that don't know better and they sign contracts that they shouldn't sign because they're not used to the contracts and they get caught up in a terrible deal. And then once they realize it, they can't even get out of it. And some will actually penalize you if you wasted their time, basically. I mean, I recently seen this contract up to $50,000. It made no sense. So to answer your question, in that situation where a dentist is looking for essentially financial help to grow, they know they're not done yet, and they also want help running the business, I think that it could make sense. It didn't say it always is the case, but in some cases, I believe that is the case.
The reason the DSO wants to buy 51 to 90% of a practice, Gary, is very simple. The minute the dentist leaves, the practice is worth zero. Have you ever seen what happens to a dental practice where the dentist dies? Or I saw one where a dentist was like quickly thrown in jail because of Medicaid fraud and whatever. Like, When a dentist is gone, within weeks, you're selling that practice for parts. It's like ripping the heart out of a human and then watching that human perform after that. If they can buy a controlling interest, 51% or more, but they can let you retain ownership of a material amount of the practice, they've got you by the balls. Start to be craft. You're not leaving. You can't leave. And you can't sell. No young doctor wants to come in and buy a minority share of your. So what you have left is not a marketable asset. So what you thought you had is now worth pennies on the dollar because it's not marketable. Because no rising. Anybody who's wanting to get into private practice, they're looking to get into private practice. They're of the mindset like, I want to control my destiny, like you guys, which is why you're entrepreneurs. Well, there are other people who say entrepreneurism is I want to control my own destiny. And people with that mentality, they don't want to buy your minority shares. So I don't like any of that. As far as Elijah, what you're saying, I'm going to sell a share of my practice so I can raise capital. Dentists have never, ever, ever, ever had problems raising capital. Now, if you want to go on a binging spree on buying practices, that's way beyond your pay grade. Yeah, you're going to need a partner who has the wherewithal, the know-how, and the financial backing, right? And that's what some dentists have done, right? Like a lot of the bigger DSOs were dentists started, and then they brought in the knowledge and the financial backing, and then they went on a binging spree. And then at that point in time, what the dentist, the role of those founding dentists were the guys to talk all the other dentists into doing it. Because dentists don't believe business types like us. They have much more trust in each other historically, although that trust has been severely violated in these last 5 years.
So Elijah, if you have a dentist that's saying, hey, I want this offer, it looks like a good offer, but it's 51%, it's 99%, how are you walking them through that?
If it's 51% versus 99%, well,
No, I'm saying in that window, because here's what I'm trying to get to, Elijah, just so we're on the same page. And Nate is like, I'm pretending I'm a dentist and I'm listening to you guys, and I'm trying to figure out if I wanted to sell my practice, who should I listen to? Because if I go to a lawyer, they're going to tell me technically what's going on with the contract, but they're not going to understand some of this nuanced accounting things that Nate's talking about unless they've been doing it for a long time. And if I talk to a brokerage, to Nate's point, it's like, well, they have an incentive to make the most money possible. So I'm trying to figure out how I would protect myself if I was a dentist. So far, what I've heard was either sell 100% or don't sell anything more than 49%.
Well, I want to comment first on the 100% piece, so everybody is very clear on that and isn't misguided in any capacity. When a dental practice is purchased from a group specifically, or a DSO or merging group or any sorts, they're buying out 100%. However, you're only getting like 80% of that money up front. And there's typically a earnout. And the earnout basically states that your EBITDA can't drop ultimately. So it's still not even bulletproof at 100% because there's things that they can come in and do and say, well, you can't see, the patients the way that you used to see them before. And maybe they take away your marketing and they use their marketing that's crap. I mean, there's many ways that you still can lose your 20%, right? So you have to trust the DSO you're getting with or the group that you're getting with if you're selling to a group. So even if you sell 100% of your practice to a group, you're not typically getting 100%. You're getting 75 or 80% of your practice, and you're going to get the rest in an earnout. And you don't have to stay necessarily for that earnout either. Not necessarily. There are absolutely dentists that do not practice clinically that have associates working for them, and they are essentially a consultant. So they're not necessarily having to stay long-term, not all the time. Sometimes, and I'm talking about bigger practices, not smaller practices, but they don't always have to stay, but most of the time they have to stay on as a consultant. Regardless, there's an earnout period. So I just don't want anybody saying, hey, Elijah said 100%. Well, 100%, but there's an earnout typically as well. And that question you gave me was loaded, by the way, Gary. How do I approach practices 51% whenever they want to sell to a group? this 51% to 99%? What is my approach?
Or what would you advise me? Let's use me. So let's say I'm a dentist. I have a big practice. I do want to sell. And the reason I want to sell, to your point, Elijah, I want to grow. I want to add more practices. I can't borrow any more money. I leverage my house. I'm very successful. I make great money on paper, but I don't make big boy money to be able to reinvest and like grow the way that I want to. And a DSO comes to me, big DSO, and they say, Gary, we'll give you the money. And they're given big, what was the multiple that you said, Nate? 8, 9. Yeah. But they're going to take 51%. Like, how would you advise me?
First, I would negotiate that 51% up. 51% is a low percentage, number one. But the biggest way is interviewing multiple groups to find the right group that makes the most sense, and make sure that there's essentially the dentist is reaching. And even if a dentist is not using a broker, the dentist should always reach out to at least 3 dentists who have sold, and not recommendations from that DSO, but on their own, if they can find them, 3 dentists who have sold to that DSO or that group, and ask how their experience has been. And essentially finding a group that aligns with core values, making sure that they have all the things that they still want in the group. And more than anything, if they don't need it, they shouldn't even sell in the first place, right? If they don't need it, you can grow on your own. But if they want to sell and they want a partner, they just have to find the right partner. As far as terms of the contract, there are so many different ways that you can sit in terms.
Yeah, let me share something about that. The first thing is, Gary, you were talking about big boy money. You're saying I have a practice and I'm doing great, but it's not big boy money, right? I'm not flying around on a Gulf Stream, and I don't have a big yacht that I let.
Or I'll make it even simpler. I go to my private bank and they've gotten to the point like, Gary, we've already loaned you all the money that we're going to loan you.
Well, I would say, why are you borrowing more money?
To grow. I want to grow. I want to keep growing.
Banks will continue to lend you money. If the banks will continue to lend you money as long as you're doing good.
No, not from what I understand. They'll reach a certain point that your local bank isn't going to loan you money anymore. There comes a point, the end of the road of that, from my understanding.
Nate, I'll tap you in your finance. I'm not going to step in your lane.
Generally, we're trying to help our clients build wealth and get out of debt, and not further and further and further in debt themselves. And interestingly, I'm not a big fan, generally speaking, of doctors owning multiple practices. In fact, I wrote a blog post in 2016 or 2017 called "An Epidemic in Dentistry, the Multi-Practice Model," which is like the opposite of DSO, selling to a DSO. And because what we found back then is we had a lot of doctors who had multiple location practices, clients of ours, and they were almost without exception the lowest netting clients we had. Dental practices are very, very hard to manage. And it's very hard. Like what Heartland is doing, they seem to have a system and they seem to be good at it. But what they're doing is very difficult. You're herding cats. I mean, dentists have they've got opinions about how things should go. And the other thing is that they know that they're leaving a bunch of money on the table. Here's one thing: we're getting into some weeds, and we're getting into some nuanced stuff. Your question was, if I want to sell my practice, how would you advise me? What should you do? Gary, this is one thing that I would tell you. Let me take a stab at that, because Elijah, you took a stab at that, but I didn't get a chance to answer that. If you want to sell your practice, I want to reiterate something that I said earlier. First of all, you were talking about selling. It was being talked about selling as a way to raise capital. If you're trying to sell to raise capital, I would say that is the most expensive form of capital that you will ever get in your entire life if you're a dentist. If I want to, Elijah, you said, I want new equipment, I want to hire people, I want another office. I'm saying if you give up equity of your practice, it is the holy grail. It is the one asset that is like your birthright as a dentist to own. And so you're giving up. It's like when the Native Americans sold Manhattan Island, right? Worst sale ever. Like that's what they're selling. And so if you're trying to sell your practice to raise capital, that's the most expensive capital you will ever get. The other thing is, I want to come back to that. The other thing is, if you're raising capital to buy a bunch of other practices, you want to go into grow mode, then you need to understand that you're now changing your career. You're changing from being a dentist into a manager of dentists. And that's another thing. A lot of dentists think that they want to do that. Oh, I want to grow, I want to grow, I want to grow, I want to make more money, I'm going to do this. But they don't realize that you're saying, okay, you're getting into a career change. And so that's just something to be aware of. And I think you guys will agree with me. It's a very different role to be the owner operator of 10 plus practices or any number of multiple practices. Very different role than being the clinical dentist in the one practice that you own. Now, let me get back to your question, Gary. Those were some things that I felt like I needed to say because some things that were said earlier. If you are looking to sell your practice, one thing that you have to understand about the finances of these deals, they're going to sign you up for a 5-year work back, right? You're going to commit today to sell the practice today, and you're going to say, okay, in 5 years, I want to have the freedom to leave. Okay, that's what you're doing when you sell to DSO. 5 years from now, you're going to pay them back all the money that you would have owned, called the EBITDA, right? The EBITDA is what's left over after you've paid all the bills plus the dentist's salary for being the clinical doctor in the practice. The EBITDA is what the owners of the business get. So you sell your practice to me. I retain you for 5 years. During that 5 years, you're now paying me back. I'm going to give you a bunch of money up front. During the 5 years, you're paying me back because you're working for me now, but you're doing all the work. What I have found in the dozens, and I don't even know how many actual deals that I've reviewed, what I've found that the break-even point is about 5.2 years, meaning at 5.2 years of work back, you have paid me back everything that I paid to you to buy your practice up front. Does that make sense, Gary?
Yeah. So I'm basically just shot myself in the foot.
Yeah. This is a mathematical calculation. It's not Nate's opinion versus Elijah's opinion versus anybody's opinion. It's a mathematical calculation. If I buy your business, okay, let's assume you own 100% of it. I don't know, and I don't want to get derailed on that, but let's assume you own 100% of that. So you work in the business as an employee, right? You're working in the business, but you also own the business. So I buy it. I'm going to give you $10 million up front. And let's say it earns $2 million a year EBITDA. But I'm going to sign you to a 5-year contract. Every year that you now work for me and I now own it, you're paying me. I'm now getting that $2 million. What I'm saying is if you choose to sell to a DSO at some point in time, you will have paid the DSO back every cent that they gave you to buy your practice. And that's a fact because you no longer own the practice. Now you're just an employee in the practice, which is a subordinated role, and it's a subordinated paycheck, subordinated responsibilities. And at some point in time, you will have essentially sold the practice for zero. And so when you're weighing your options, Gary, you need to know that if I go the DSO route, I've got to sell to them, and I need to have really crunched these numbers because at some point in time, if I work here too long, I will have basically given my practice away for free. No, I think that you've got a ton of potential, and I really like I read every word on your whole website and all your businesses, and one of the things in there that you like people and you like to help people. I actually believe that's true. This is a dirty business that you're involved in. I'm not saying you're dirty. I'm not saying that because I don't know. I haven't been on phone calls. I've only heard this. There was a bunch of stuff that you said on the first podcast with Gary when I wasn't here to defend myself that I think I very much take issue with, and I would disagree openly with you if you wanted to go there. But you just got to know. I'm just telling you as like a friend who's not a friend, but you're gonna have to be careful because it's gonna be very difficult to operate in your space. The finance industry in general is a dirty industry, and it's hard. I'm looking in the mirror too. I'm not saying that I'm this wonderful guy. I try every day, and every day I have to choose integrity and choose. But I'm just saying, like, you've been in this a year and a half. There's a lot of money, but There's a lot of money out there that's very dirty money.
So what did you say you had issue with that you disagreed with? That's kind of where I'm trying to get to, is the disagreement stuff. Sure, let's do it.
Okay, hold on, Garrett. Were you understanding what I'm saying? You're saying I'm a doctor. I want to sell my practice. Did you capture the point that I was trying to make?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. If I don't do it right, I end up working and not actually making what I should have made. And through the part that you have a problem with is you're saying it's deceptive because I think I'm actually making more money, but in reality, I'm not making anywhere near what I would have done if I would have just sold it for a smaller multiple and exited.
Most people, when you ask them how much money they make, if you ask a dentist, how much money do you make? They'll be able to tell you their collections, and they'll be able to tell you how much they get to bring home to spend. That's all they know. Okay? That is not their true income. Their income is the operating income from the practice. It's their salary plus the EBITDA. So especially if you've got a dentist who's like 45 years old, still paying off a lot of debt, so they never see that money. Okay, they could be netting $1.5 million a year, and they could be just skyrocketing their net worth. They could be doing everything right, but they don't feel it because they don't get to touch any of that money, because a lot of it's going to debt service, a lot of it's going to fund retirement plans. They've got, they're paying for all these things over here, so they don't think they're that rich. DSO comes along and says, I'll give you $10 million. And they're like, oh my gosh. And then they say, I'll give you $10 million, plus I'll give you all this equity. And then they'll start telling stories about recaps, which you were telling stories about recaps on the last podcast, Elijah. We can talk about recaps and what a kind of a scam that is, to be honest with you. That's you're going to strike gold in California of this whole thing. But they're like, okay, I'm going to get I'm going to get more money than I've ever seen in my life in my bank account. And I'm sweating my brains out running this practice, and I'm stressed and it's hard. And you're telling me it's going to be easy. And you're telling me, because I don't have to do any business stuff anymore. And you're telling me I'm going to see more money than I've ever seen in my entire life in my bank account at one time. And you've got some broker, not you, Elijah, but other brokers. You've got some broker who's got a spreadsheet that tells them what you guys would vomit. If you have any heart and soul at all, you would vomit if you've seen some of the spreadsheets that I've seen put out by brokers about how your $2 million of equity is going to grow to $40 million in 5 years. I've actually seen that stuff.
So Elijah, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I got to address a whole bunch of things. I should be taking notes again. The first thing that I will address is the comment that I think was pretty kind of Nate. You are working in I'm going to tell what I heard. You are working in a slimy or hard industry in this world. That's what I heard.
You're working in an industry that is very difficult to keep your soul.
Yep. And I'm going to say, I've seen it firsthand and I understand it. I also think it's important to understand that I actually don't come from money and I don't need a whole bunch of money. And I live a good lifestyle as I am. And there are other people who are very extremely greedy and only care about money, and they will burn bridges to get to places, and that is not me. And I have been told so many times during this short journey that I have been on about the industry that I was getting in, and I'm convinced to change it. And I also fully believe that I will not personally change. I have the highest level of integrity, and I will not let money change me. And I've been given the opportunity multiple times through my career to do the wrong things for a whole bunch of money. And every single time I have turned it down. I have a clear head, and it's the best thing ever to have a clear head. So many of my friends have so much more money than me. And I'm proud to say that I'm the least wealthy one of them all. And I'm probably the least wealthy broker, but I have a clear head. So I just wanted to, respond to that comment. And I'm not saying you're wrong. And thank you for the feedback. I've got that already from many people, because there is a lot of money involved, and people are willing to do some pretty messed up things for money, not me. So I'm gonna lay that there first.
The recap. He said recapping is an absolute scam, and there was a gold rush in California, which I didn't fully understand that, but I would love to understand it more.
Recap. I'm not saying recap event. First of all, what is a recap? A recap is either a restructuring of the financing, usually through debt financing. So it's a DSO, a private equity backed DSO, going out and borrowing a bunch of money against their DSO to pull out a bunch of cash. Okay. That's one way to recap. Another way to recap is for the DSO to sell it, hopefully at a higher multiple, right? And then when they sell it for a higher multiple. What I'm saying is not that recaps don't happen or they haven't happened. What I'm saying is it is not the norm at all, and it will not be the norm. Why? Because you've got a tremendous amount of headwind facing this DSO industry. The DSO industry, like I'm here like spouting it off, but it's going to take care of itself. Give it 2 more years when all of the doctors who sold in 2021, 2022, when their contracts are up and they start leaving, this DSO landscape is going to change drastically.
Okay, so you think there's going to be a lot of people are like consolidation. You think that the DSO land is going to go the other way?
100%, I think that. And the reason I think that is because of the business model. It's because of what I'm saying is not Nate's opinion. It's a fact that the value in dentistry is the production capacity of the doctors. That is the value. There's no other secret sauce. There's no intellectual property that they have, there's no name brand. It's the production capacity of the doctors. And the doctors give it enough time, and the doctors realize that I'm not going to work for this stupid DSO anymore. Not all of them, most of them. And the ones that we're talking about and the ones that need to fill the seats in the DSOs, the good doctors, they're not going to do that for their whole career. You've got a whole generation right now of young doctors working for, $250,000, $300,000 for Heartland. And when they realize how much they're producing, and when they wake up to the fact that, wow, if I went into private practice, I could turn my $250,000 into $750,000 or $1 million. How long do you think they're going to stay there, Gary?
Yeah, I follow what you're saying. Why do you think optometry went the opposite direction? Was it because more of the technology and things like that?
Oh, great question. Have you ever gotten glasses before?
Yeah, no, I haven't, but my kids and wife does and stuff.
Optometry went the opposite direction. Pharmacy went the opposite direction. It used to be like your Main Street pharmacist, you knew him by name and you went in there and Jim, your pharmacist, was doing all this stuff. When you go to Walgreens, you don't even know who the pharmacist is, nor do you care. Your doctor gave you a prescription. You go to the pharmacist. In fact, going to Walgreens is a pain in the butt. You'd rather, if there were a mail-in pharmacy, you'd rather do that, right? So that business model is not a model that protects the pharmacist. It doesn't matter who the pharmacist is. Optometry is less, there's less of a relationship between the optometrist but optometry is like not super specialized. Like if you look at the degree of specialization of a dentist compared to an optometrist, now I'm not saying optometrists aren't smart and they didn't go study and they don't know a lot about the eyes. But if you go and get glasses, they're like, does this one better or is this one better? I mean, AI is going to take over optometry. Technology is going to completely gobble up optometry, and it's not going to be long. The technology is probably already here where you don't even need an optometrist. Now, an ophthalmologist doing surgery in your eyes, yeah, you want a trained person there. That's not going anywhere. But dentistry, you go there, you lie on your back, you open your mouth, and someone takes a sharp spinning drill, like they could kill you. And they cut your teeth and your gums open. There's blood and like pus and stuff shooting everywhere. That is a highly, highly specialized profession. It's going to take maybe hundreds of years for the technology to get so good to where robots are doing all of the dentistry. But until then, you absolutely need a dentist. You go to the optometrist, you go to Stanton Optical, you don't care. You go to Costco optometry, you don't care who the person was who gave you the eye exam and wrote your prescription. I mean, basically the machine did that. The human, all they did is this one better or this one better? This one better or this one better?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's helpful. All right, Elijah. So what do you think? I feel like there's a lot more alignment here than I thought there was going to be. So I would love your thoughts, Elijah, where you're at.
Yeah, I think that there's definitely alignment. I think that it would probably be a really good podcast if Jason Brown, our managing director, was on here that could talk finances like strong, like Nate. It would be interesting to hear them go back and forth. But I'll tell you what I won't do is pretend I know something that I don't. I'm not getting ate up. And I also will tell you that, I've only been in this space for a year and a half. So I'm learning every day. I learned a lot on this podcast. I'll never know it all. And, it was educational. And I got my one thing that I wanted. It was the concession. It was the two little concessions, and I got it. And so I'm happy, and that's all for me, Gary. I mean, I'm happy to answer any other questions or do anything else, but I'm in a good place.
Nate, how about you? You feel like there's more alignment here than, or you made your point very, very clear. You're super clear of what's ethical and what's fair, and that there's different situations out there. Is there anything else you want to tackle?
On a personal level, I actually do like Elijah. I've been on podcasts with other people who are brokering practice who I do not like. I think they're slimy, deceptive, snake-like people. I do not think that of you, Elijah. I do not get that feeling from you. I hope you don't change. Clayton Christensen, the late Clayton Christensen, who's one of the greatest business academic minds to ever live, he wrote a book called How Will You Measure Your Life? One of the great books ever written. And he says, how are you going to answer 3 questions? Number 1, that your career, your profession is satisfying and fruitful. Number 2, that your relationships stay good throughout your life. You stay married to the mother of your children, and you have good relationship with your kids and your friends and all this stuff. And number 3, how are you going to stay out of jail? And he says, whenever I mention the third one, people always laugh, like, come on, like, we're not going to get into jail. But then he goes on to tell a story about how Jeff Skilling. You guys recognize that name, Jeff Skilling? Jeff Skilling was one of the masterminds of Enron, who ended up lifetime, like hundreds of year prison sentence. Jeff Skilling was Clayton Christensen's Harvard Business School classmate graduate. And he says how Jeff Skilling was the president, like the student body president of their Harvard Business School class. And he was liked by everybody. He was voted unanimously the guy who's going to be most successful and all that stuff. And he just talks about how, so Elijah, I actually really do like you. I appreciate you. And I want you to be successful in your career. I don't know. I think that the higher calling is helping dentists rise to the occasion. I mean, you talk to these guys who are burnt out. They don't know how to run a business. They don't know what they're doing, and they want to sell. They want to capitulate and give up to the DSO. What I'm trying to do, first of all, I'm saying mathematically selling to the DSO is not anything what you think, and it's not this big windfall. It's definitely not generational wealth. And the second thing I'm trying to do is actually arm dentists and empower them to not give up and surrender, but to rise up and to meet the demands and learn how to run the practice. That's where like the real value is. And like just speaking to you personally, Elijah, I think you've got a really good mind. I think that you're extremely likable. You've got a tremendous amount of leadership ability. You're motivating. I would love to see you, instead of facilitating doctors giving up and selling out to non-producing, non-clinical owners, I would love to see you dedicate your career to actually helping these guys be successful.
Thank you. That was the most kind words I've heard on a podcast before. I really appreciate it. I believe it was genuine. I was a dental consultant when I lived in Hawaii from 2010 to 2017. And after that, I decided I just wanted to speak on stage and tell them my message. And if they liked it, great. If not, it's okay too. and I stopped being a consultant. I do believe that 75% of the dentists that come through to us, and we get around 40 to 50 inbound leads and referrals every single month, 75% are not ready. Their margins aren't right, their business is not right. And instead of teaching them how to grow, because I don't love that, I love DJing.
Well, it's hard work. Like it's much easier work to get a commission from a DSO sale as a broker than it is to actually help a doctor.
Yes, I agree. So I'm connected to a lot of consultants and different financial advisors and different marketing agencies, et cetera. And it's a lot easier for me to just stay in my lane and refer out to the experts, because I don't believe that I'm the expert any longer in the consulting space. I don't believe that I'm the best that I could be, and I think it'd be a terrible referral if I referred to myself. But I've been there. I've been a consultant for many years. I spoke for Invisalign. I spoke for Straumann. I'm a dental hygienist. I understand clinical dentistry. I just don't like to go into practices and teach them how to grow. I don't have the patience for it. And yes, it is easier to just get a commission and help them to sell. That's for sure. But at the end of the day, that's
Easier and a heck of a lot more lucrative. Throw that in there as well.
yeah, I'll throw that in there, and a heck of a lot more lucrative. So I refer out to that, but it doesn't mean that I'm not involved in the process. And when you tell me about a practice that's not running well and how easy it is to run a practice, I totally agree with you. And in fact, I taught dentists how to do that. I just didn't get joy out of it. It was too hard. There's a negative Nelly in the practice. There's a person that doesn't want to change their ways, and they've been doing the same thing for years. And it has drained me. I'm a really positive person, and I can't stand going into a negative energy situation where I feel like I can't win. I don't thrive in those environments. So I opted out of that, and I send them to people that are the experts that are better than me.
If somebody wants to reach out to you, Elijah, and learn more about what you do, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Yes. The best way to get a hold of me is just go to ElijahDesmond.com or go to Elijah at dentalpitchbrokerage.com. I'm going to just do a quick plug. I am very passionate about saving kids' lives from the stage. And that is one of the biggest things that I'm bringing into dentistry. And you'll see that on my personal page. And it's okay if I divert really quick. September 3rd, I'm in the process of raising a bunch of money to bring a motivational concert to Canton, Akron area, Akron, Ohio, with 5 high schools in one football stadium, and bringing some motivational speakers to help kids to better their lives. And it's my very first one. It's a dream of mine that I've had for a while. And I've said anytime I get an opportunity to be on a podcast and share that I'm going to, it's the very first one. And I've been trying to do it for a long time. And there's no better feeling in the world than getting off the stage and having a kid come up to you and give you a hug, and that hug that they don't let go. And they're usually crying. And they'll tell me in my ear that I was going to go home and commit suicide, but the reason I didn't is because of the words Z said from the stage. So that's my number one call to action, is go to ElijahDesmond.com and go to Beyond the Game. That's the nonprofit that I've been volunteering for 5 years. I'm vice president of.
It's awesome. All right, Nate. If someone wants to reach out to you and get connected with you and learn more about what you do or learn from you, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, the best way to get in touch with me is through our website, practicefinancialgroup.com.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on today, both of you. I learned a lot, and I appreciate you guys having this hard conversation. I know it's not an easy thing. And then I'm just thankful that you guys were willing to do this, because to be frank with you, I put these kind of offers out there all the time to people, and people don't usually want to come on and record this kind of content. So I think it's great. I think this is how things get better. I think this is how people learn. And I just really appreciate both of you being willing to do this.
Thanks, Gary.